In recent years, Marvel Disney have faced many problems. Many of them have been by their own doing, and we all know the issues with Kathleen Kennedy, and, you know, put a chick in it, let's be real. So like, sub, and do the usual, but I want to talk about the issues with the MCU at this point in time. In recent years, many of the films haven't done very well. Some of the shows have faced major problems, and they've churned out detritus such as She-Hulk, and it's just been it's been a mess, hasn't it? Like, let's be real. And I want to highlight some of those problems here. I mean, it's a huge franchise, and I feel like it should have ended with Endgame, and I think it needed to just stop. And the problem is they have a huge franchise and they're trying to shoehorn in every genre within that franchise. Now, I'll pick on She-Hulk, which is low-hanging fruit. The wonderful and idiotic Karen of Twitter, Dan Slott, voicing his opinions was hilarious. That man needs a serious intervention at some point in time. But the thing that gets me is they're trying to shoehorn characters into other genres, and I don't think it works. A lot of the recent Marvel movies, the Marvels being one of them, is not great, and Ant-Man didn't fare very well, Marvels didn't do very well, and the last Doctor Strange was a sequel to a television show, and it's really frustrating. I think key problems are the villain issue. I think they lack very compelling villains. And when you look at certain standout performances, such as Tim Hiddleston's Loki, the show was terrible, but when it started, he was very good. Not that god awful for Love of Thunder. Many villains seem very one-dimensional, and they're very forgettable. There's so much focus on the main characters that they forget they actually have to tell a good story with the villains. I mean, they're obviously going into Fantastic Four territory, and I do not like the casting. I will say that I don't like the casting. But the thing that gets me is that they're going to have, if they do Fantastic Four, it's going to be Galactus, Doctor Strange, and Silver Surfer. I'm sure of it. We all know the last time they attempted to do Galactus in live action, he was a cloud. But the performance of the Silver Surfer in that film was really good. I don't know how they're going to deal with it, because you have someone who is, if they go down that route. I mean, Doctor Strange could be interesting, but again, going down that route when everything just feels somewhat derivative. The villains tend to show up, have a diabolical plan, and go. And I find that just frustrating to watch. I think the storytelling is severely lacking, because you need compelling villains, and you need people with a bit of darkness and a bit of depth, and something more than just the standard plan or hurt feelings, because their inability to actually unalive some of their villains, I hate using that word, is also a frustrating thing. Villain arcs need to end at some point. I think they've also fallen into formulaic storytelling. Every film basically now follows a predictable narrative structure with similar plot beats and character arcs. It makes it feel derivative of itself, and that's something that I think has picked up on. These films many times have more or less the same plot refaced into a slightly different thing, or a slightly different take on the same plot, but the same plot beats. I think some of the plot beats are also frustrating, because The Marvels, for example, was more of a sequel to a television show people didn't really watch. And the same with the recent Doctor Strange. It wasn't really a standalone movie. It was a sequel to a television show. And it seems kind of pointless when more casual audience aren't going to be familiar with said TV show. A film should stand alone. The best thing about the Marvels was the end credit scene. That was it. But the question I have on that one, just as an overall theme, is that why is the Marvel films banking on the end credit scene to keep people engaged? They tease the end credit scene constantly, or post credit scene, I should say. It's frustrating, and every film is basically a trailer for the next step in the MCU. It's predictable, the narrative feels contrived, and I think the formula is getting tired. I think people are bored with films like that because they're bored of the same stories, the same character arcs, the same motivations. These films tend to feel like overarching theme park extravaganzas rather than anything. I see a lot of people saying that, well, you should like it because the special effects are amazing. But you can't give it negative reviews. People worked hard on it. Tell that to a college professor who's grading your work. Just putting that one out there. And I will say, in a controversial opinion, the MCU is not an art form. These films are designed to make money. And it's very, very, there's nothing wrong with that. Money makes the world go round. But the overall arching thing of these films is they're designed to get bums on seat and get people in. And people are getting bored. People are getting bored of the formulaic storytelling. And also, I think Marvel are making a huge mistake in keeping that formulaic storytelling going. They don't seem to want to put effort in. Let's have some nice previs scenes. And also, and I will say this is a storytelling issue, over-reliance on humour sometimes. And humour is a key component of these movies. Like, that is a whole thing. Humour is a key component of the MCU. And that works. But sometimes the humour, especially in the more serious situations, it can lead to major tonal inconsistencies within the films and across the franchise. Thor Love and Thunder, for example, was diabolically awful. I didn't get what they were trying to do with it. It was overreaching humour, it was inconsistent with everything else, and they shouldn't really be using films like this as an experiment each time. They seem to be going backwards in terms of the humour as well. Because again, humour is needed. Films like this need a bit of humour, but sometimes the humour needs to be put aside for the more serious matters. And it's really frustrating. And I see that. The over-focus on diversity, and this is a thing, and I get it. Good representation, great. Great. The Marvel comics are amazingly diverse, and it's fantastic. But when they do it on screen, it feels more shallow. They pull in people because they are this or that, and they pull in people because they fit a certain bill, rather than actually looking for good performers, good actors, and overall wasting good performers and actors. I say this in complete honesty. They've put some really great actors in these movies and wasted them. They've wasted the opportunity with a lot of these great actors and performers and directors. They also bring in the wrong directors for this. This is a thing that people don't realise. Bringing in some artsy independent film director to a big budget movie is not a good idea. You need to bring in people who make big budget special effects movies. You need people with that background. And this brings me to another issue, the over-reliance on CGI. When you look at, and I get it, green screen, CGI effects, great, they do the job, but when the CGI is deteriorating to a point that many of these films look worse than Iron Man, and the Iron Man, the original, looked really good. when you look at films from 10 years ago, they're overworking their performers, they're overworking the special effects with people with unrealistic deadlines, and look at the floating head syndrome. But also, they've gone down a route with the over-reliance on CGI that everything is. The backgrounds are CGI, everything is green screen, everything is this, everything is that. We just put the actors in a giant green room or blue room and start filming them. And often it does show, especially in the overall look, because too much CGI can lead to things looking too much like a cartoon or date things really fast. And that's what is a whole thing. Continuity issues. There, with over God knows the amount of films at this point and numerous TV shows, continuity is a huge challenge. While the overreaching storylines are genuinely cohesive, there have been major inconsistencies and retcons that have frustrated fans. They really have done that. They've retconned things to the point that they keep doing these little things just to make excuses for this being here. And the problem with endlessly retconning things is it kind of becomes a mess. And that is a thing. This is a really basic point, like keeping things consistent. Film nerds and the geek community will notice tiny little inconsistencies in films, and it will frustrate people at a level that most people don't get. And that brings us to creative control. The MCU is a massive commercial enterprise. It's owned by Disney, which has led to concerns about creative control and artistic freedom. Many filmmakers and actors have spoken out about feeling constrained by the demands of the franchise and its corporate overlords. And this is what really frustrates me. Some of the biggest people on the internet who cry about consumerism and money and how evil it is, and they don't realise they're supporting a massive corporation that has such a bad history. They talk about creative freedom, but many directors and actors within the franchise don't have that control. Like, people have come out and said, in coded ways, but that feeling of frustration with the kind of environment that it creates. As a director, if you're not allowed to tell a good story and everything you do is controlled by a corporate producer, what's the point in even trying when the corporate producer could direct the film? Are they just getting these people because, artsy director with a good reputation, we can put his name on it? I mean, it's creativity by numbers, and it clearly shows in recent output. And you can see the constraints. Always be wary when producers and people above the directors are talking more about the movie than the director. That is something that most people don't realise and most people don't get. And that brings us to audience fatigue. This is a massive thing. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is massively oversaturated. How many films are in development? How many TV shows are in development? How many things are locked behind paywalls on streaming services when they are discontinuing DVDs and Blu-rays in some markets? While people will, and this is a physical media thing, people do want to watch these at the comfort of their own home. Why are you not releasing it on only your streaming platform, which is bleeding money? Disney Plus is not doing well, and it shows. The quality of the content that is on there is bad. And audience fatigue is real. People get bored. People outgrow. And when you have a film franchise with so many films and TV shows, all sitting there, all doing this, all doing that, why aren't they just saying, let's take a break? Let's take a year, 2 years, 3 years out, and then come back with something stronger. A new game plan. I don't think that's too much to ask for, but I think some fans do worry about oversaturation, and it has diluted the quality of the content. and it has diminished enthusiasm for future releases. How many base and switches are there going to be? How many times are we going to see major characters sidelined for characters that people don't really like or have a connection with? Is this just going to be a constant thing within the MCU? Like, people want to be excited about film releases, and when the only people excited about your film are blue-haired diehards on Twitter who everything, it's a god, you are the gods, you are our corporate gods, we will worship you, you are Big Brother, we love Big Brother. Why are you not trying to go for more general audiences? Why are you not going for the kid audiences that you originally started with? And again, discontinuing DVDs and Blu-ray is a major thing. Many times your films will appear on certain websites on the internet weeks ahead of their release, and people have already watched it. The amount of leaking that goes on in Disney is amazing, and I'm conspiracy theory time. Aluminum foil. It's coming from within Disney, and often they use it to blame for the failure of the movie. They also tend to throw actors in the pipeline to deflect against criticism. Brie Larson is prime example. As much as I'm not a fan of hers, a lot's coming out from behind the scenes where they obviously used her as a woman as a deflect for defense. Captain Marvel is a fantastic character in the comic books, and I think in the MCU they could have done her justice, but they didn't. And I get the feeling, going by what's been said in interviews and stuff like that Brie Larson is fed up. And that's a huge thing. Many actors are fed up. Look at the amount of actors that have walked away or just gone, I didn't like that movie now. It's fascinating to watch, and it's quite sad to see because many actors seem to be disheartened about the whole thing. I think when Marvel were good, they built something on genuine interest, but now they just are trying to recapture the magic they had 10 years ago or 5 years ago. They're trying to recapture magic and it didn't work. You can't recapture that magic in a constant thing. You cannot throw mud at a wall with a random TV show or a movie release and pray that people will pick up and it will be good. I cannot wait for Deadpool 3, but given that it was made during the strikes, there was no ad-libbing. Given the fact that the film hopefully doesn't have too much Disney involvement, because I like Ryan Reynolds, and who in fairness doesn't at this point, because Ryan Reynolds, to quote Shania Twain, so you think you're Ryan Reynolds. It's interesting because I think they need to focus on more good standalone movies and take risks. And the risk aversion is a major problem here. It's a huge property for Disney, but their tendency is to play safe and stick with established formulas rather than taking creative risks, which can lead to the lack of anything, actually, evolution, experimentation within the franchise. They occasionally throw things at the wall, like making She-Hulk Ally McBeal, but even then, it's still, there is a formula that they are using. They need to continue to evolve and listen to what the fans want. Kathleen Kennedy needs to be fired. She needs to get out of there. She has been notoriously bad for the franchise. And going by this lawsuit that's going to be happening, this is going to go to trial. There's a lawsuit happening, and I'm not going to go into that because that's a whole different video, but that will go to trial now because there's money to go to trial. All the paperwork is going to come out. Disney have already been outed using bot armies to silence critics and act as promotion. Many other companies have also been outed doing that. Ultimately, things need to change, and I think one of the big things is get rid of the people in control now. Bring in new people, bring in new blood. Take a few years out of the franchise. It is a homogenization of cinema. It's a homogenization of creativity. and can it be saved? Yes, I firmly believe that, but it needs the right people. Given the amount of money Disney is bleeding as we speak, it's not a good sign, and they need to bring in new people, new blood, take time out, rethink the game plan, and focus on good standalone movies. Didn't they learn the lesson from Spider-Man? Give fans what they want and it will make money. Everything else has fallen by the wayside. It's not that hard, is it? I'm going to leave this video here. This is me trying new formats and new things on my main channel, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and like, sub, and hit the little bell icon, because that's always useful, because I'm shadow banned into eternity. So hopefully you have a wonderful day.